Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the RationalInvestor.com's Daily Brief Recap. It's Monday morning here. Looks like we're just waiting for YouTube to kick in. Hello, everyone. And there it is. So it looks like we are live, so let's get to work. As I said, Monday 23rd, we just had the big quadruple witching pass there on Friday. Things are relatively calm in the market this morning. And of course, we've had a big fundamental event for Bitcoin. The backed launch, which frankly speaking, I think is, I'm not going to call it a non-event, but I'm going to say, it's not like it's earth-shattering. So far, these backed people, they've traded a grand total of 56 Bitcoins on their first day of trade. So congratulations to the back people. We finally got that a fundamental event out of the way. And I'm wondering whether maybe this might actually turn into a sort of a sell the rumor, because we've just been working our way down. And then maybe if we're lucky, this becomes a buy the news event on the other side of that. But we'll take a look at Bitcoin in a moment. Looking at our chart deck that I like to put together here for you, just review the kind of ideas that we're kicking around here this morning. Of course, we always start off with just a nice quick boo at the US dollar index, just to make sure we're pointing in a good direction. We talked recently about the potential fractal top. I'm getting the impression that the Fed said, all right, fine, we'll lower interest rates, but that's it. Enough is enough. And we had some more econs come out of Europe this morning, which are showing even further weakness in the euro. And remember, like German data is coming in, painting basically recession. If we look at things like German business confidence, market manufacturing PMI coming in 41.4, and of course the magic number there is 50, so we're like well below that. It's interesting to see that France hasn't quite tipped over into recession just yet, so it looks like it's primarily out of German right now. But remember, Germany is sort of the economic engine of Europe, and so it really shouldn't surprise us to see Eurozone data also coming in very weak. And I think you could make the argument sort of the average between the two, France and Germany being sort of the big economic engines out of the Eurozone, you're getting that sort of broader Euro print. And as we said, below 50, not good. So that makes it very difficult to be bullish of things like the Euro. And while we did have our recent short idea in the euro stopped out at a profit, move stop to a trailing level hit. I think you probably should have hopped off here. It's interesting to note that as we came up against this trend line, which goes back quite a ways, that's basically off of these kilos. You can see how the market respected that the whole way down here. And what was support now appears to be turning into resistance. Fail, fail. And I think you can actually make the argument, we talked about this in the daily brief, that we actually have new M's coming in here against this. So might redraw bot levels. Maybe I'll do that in future episodes to see whether we have any new trade ideas potentially forming here. Something along those lines. We had 33, and now we can bot this out. So, be sure to stay tuned for that going forward. But we'll keep that in our back pocket for now. Probably the next market I wanted to talk to you guys about was stock market. I think I'd said in recent videos, what are you supposed to be thinking if you ever see the market smiling at you? And we're starting to get into sort of those smiley situations where, we have basically a top end of a range, then a failure through the middle. If I'm not mistaken, though, like this high here is 302.46, this high here, 302.63. So I could really anticipate seeing another test of these highs. But I've been talking for a while about how I was, cycle people were calling for the 25th, 26th of September as a market cycle pivot top. If we ended up topping out somewhere in this neighborhood, it wouldn't surprise me one bit. And probably the only other sort of caveat to this is if we look at the futures, you'll notice, especially if we drill down to like an hourly, you notice the futures did not go to new highs, new M's. So I still wanted to buy a couple more options, a couple more puts. I'm going to be watching for reload zones to add to that trade, and basically that's a trade up against these highs up in here. And if we zoom out to a little higher time frame, I think we noticed, isn't that weird? I thought I saw some gaps in here, but I'm not seeing them now. Actually, this chart looks a lot cleaner than I was expecting. Well, maybe there's a little bit of a gap. Yeah, there it is. So you can see Mountain Man sitting right there. I'm probably going to be wanting to pull the trigger right in there. And you notice that today's bar did get up into there. And I was telling people through the daily brief that as soon as I was done all these recordings, I was going to get in there and start shopping again. So I don't know. I might have missed my opportunity there. Tough to say, but I'll be patient. I'll be disciplined. Good old Brian. And if I can get any kind of counter trend rallies up into reload zones, I'll look to add to my position. So that's sort of stock market-y talk. Fear versus greed kind of conversation, and it's always funny to get the public's input into this. Is Bitcoin a fear proxy? Is Bitcoin a greed proxy? I don't know. Risk on, risk off. I think you could make the realistic argument that risk off assets are catching a bit of a bid here this morning. Everything's sort of moving up as anticipated. And stocks, you can see that M there. This is following the actually this looks like this is the CFD. I might even want to change that to the futures, but nonetheless, looking toppy. I talked on Friday about that big options expiry in the oil market. I actually do fully expect that oil to work its way back down. And I don't know, is Bitcoin a risk-on asset? It's getting its lunch handed to it here this morning on that backed event. It'd be interesting, this is that 25th cycle pivot that I've been talking about. It's interesting how the gold, the bonds, the end are all rallying back up top. I've been watching these charts and talking about wanting to wait for a trade to set up here. And I'm still very much just in sort of sit and wait mode, but you can see the counter trend rallies that are coming back up into reload zones here. Yen's just starting to get going here. Gold's worked its way. It's taken back a good chunk of this. You can see the gap on the gold market. That's sort of where I'm going to be hunting. And if a nice polite M starts developing in any of these red boxes, Brian's going to be hunting for puts. So this trade is developing away here, so we'll see how that goes. And maybe on some sort of stock market thumping, that's when we get these markets to pop up and complete these retracement moves here. So going to be watching that really closely here as well. And as I'd said a moment ago, I don't know whether Bitcoin is technically risk on or risk off asset. As Tom Lee says, maybe it's completely on its own, seeking alpha and all that kind of talk. I've been squawking quite a bit lately about palladium. I think palladium looks very strong here. Maybe waffling up at the top, and if gold rallies back up to the top end of its range, fills in those gaps and starts emming over, then I think I'm probably going to let go of my palladium stocks and stuff. But for the time being, I'm sticking with my palladium and just keep riding it. But, if I actually get super serious about hunting puts on the gold, then that probably means I'm going to hop off my palladium names. One other stock idea. This was put forth by a TRI site member. I mean, this is everything that I look for in stocks. And the good part about it is that this thing has not broken out yet, so it's just sort of sitting there. I like to buy W's. You can see right out of the gate this morning, it's back down. It's at 401 now. My breakout level comes at 4. This high here was 417. So basically, I'll be buying on a stop at 418 or better. But really interesting analogy. I did a big write-up on Twitter, so go grab that screenshot. Really impressive earnings growth. Very low stock out. Insiders own a chunk. I'd like them to own more, but I'm pleased that they do own a chunk of this. And so, it's one just sitting there. Do your own due diligence, do your own research, all that kind of stuff. I'm not giving financial advice. I'm just telling you, if this thing goes through 418 here, I'm going to be a buyer. Heading over to the corn here now, just to sort of finish up today's offering and quick boo at crypto. As we sort of said, the backed event is now finally here. It's done. We talked on the weekend video. It kind of felt like for the time being, wicks and tails like to be eaten. So we had that big wick up top there. We have this big tail down here. Really, I think the market's range bound. Here now we are going through the process of eating up this tail. Interesting how we had this original AB equals CD. We had a bot set up that was told to exit at a trailing level, small profits book, but what the hell. And then we inside barred right after that monster, almost like a hammer, but not quite. We didn't quite finish right up at the top, but we did talk a little bit about diamond patterns. The loss of this low is an inside bar failure, which means we should expect further down. So there's nothing shocking here. If anything, what I do like is that the interest in this market, both on the sell side, buying side's getting a little bit more activity, but on the sell side, the activity has really, really dried up. So that's encouraging. But we certainly don't have any sort of setups to start getting super bullish here yet. I think I had, this is basically the same chart, but this is sort of what I've been counseling people recently. I think this is such an important message. People who are watching the free videos and want to get some really good value. Yes, there's the trend line break, but for heaven's sakes, we have to see a W on the other side of the trend line. And in this particular case, what you might find is that the market just keeps working its way along this downtrend line. I see that happen all the time. Sometimes we'll play the trend line as resistance and we keep banging up against it, and then other times it'll bang up against it and then it'll act as support. So really, that's our market expectation right now. As I'd said earlier, I'd love to report this was the backed event. Everybody was watching it, nothing came of it. And we're back on the bull side, but I just don't have anything to work with here yet, and I still think these AB equals CD levels have to be traded to. So I'm kind of thinking maybe we see some sort of event right at this sort of this very cute little fast little trend line here, and the trend line off of the top coming into some sort of big apex event here. Around the end of the month. And then, of course, Brian's always a pain in the butt, but I'm just going to remind you that technically, if Bitcoin does follow WD Gans 50% of the time, 50% of the range, then really we should be expecting this 8,500 level to be traded down to around the end of the month. So maybe if we're lucky, we get some sort of big capitulation event into that month-end event. Just give us some big washout here, get this done, and then we can sort of hit the reset button and start the next phase. So keep your eyes peeled here over the next week. I got a funny feeling we're going to see some fireworks out of the corn here relatively shortly. But for the time being, still working its way lower. Does that mean that the entire crypto market is dead? Not really. You know, what was really interesting, somebody asked me to look at BNB on the YouTube video yesterday. I didn't get around to it. Not really interested in what I see here. Trade location, original market structure, breakout levels, and AB equals CDs. I'm thinking I'd like to see a move down into sort of this $13 area here. And then there's the old adage, right? Show me a new high and I'll show you a buy. In this particular case, lower highs and lower lows defines a bear market. And especially if it changes to a line chart, I mean, there's just nothing here. No W's at all. So there's really nothing to do on a name like BNB. But, you know, one that I had mentioned in the video yesterday for the public, which really, I mean, it's just a beautiful looking little chart. I don't know what's going on here. I mean, you tell me, is there any room for this thing to move up at all? I mean, yeah, that's a nutso 2017-2018 peak, but even moves against these highs, this high, even maybe even this high down the road. I mean, there's a lot of money to be potentially made here. And you notice that she worked her way right back down to the bottom end of the range, and in here comes W's. And, you know, I find it interesting that this was a name that I mentioned, you know, and Kevin said that they run a decentralized exchange, I think. I'm not totally positive. I don't quite know what the fundamental story is here. But, you know, interesting W's are W's are W's. And I like this one, too, because it also rallied up, backed off, consolidated a few days, and then popped right through here. So, you know, there are ideas out there in altcoin land. You just got to be really diligent. You got to know what your trading plan is. You got to hunt for your very specific reasons. You know, location, bottom end of the range, divergence. Look at this beautiful OBV div. MACD divergence, Willie Stupid, W in price. Everything's there. So it really doesn't surprise me that this thing's working away. So, okay, I think we'll leave the free offering at that for today. I hope you enjoyed the broadcast, gave you a few names to consider. All the best, and the only thing left to say at this point is bye for now.